Keanu Reeves stepped into a luxurious watch store without fanfare. His choice of outfit was simple: worn-out jeans, a plain gray shirt, and a faded cap. At first glance, he looked like any ordinary person, but his quiet confidence hinted otherwise. The store, known for its exclusivity, was a symbol of wealth and power. Its shiny marble floors and dazzling glass displays showcased watches that seemed more like trophies than accessories. Every detail of the space, from the golden accents on the doors to the polished surfaces, demanded attention, as if whispering that only the elite were welcome. As Keanu moved further inside, an employee standing near the counter noticed him. The man's eyes scanned him from head to toe, his face betraying a slight smirk. Without a word, the judgment was clear. This man didn't belong here. Keanu, unbothered by the unspoken disapproval, walked slowly, his hands in his pockets. He paused in front of the main showcase, where the store's most prized timepieces were displayed. His gaze settled on a particular watch, the sparkle of diamonds catching his attention. The tension in the air grew. The employee, tall and impeccably dressed, finally approached Keanu, his steps deliberate and his demeanor cool. His tone, polite but dripping with condescension, hinted at the assumption he had already made. Before we dive into what happens next, have you ever been judged unfairly by the way you looked? Let us know in the comments, and if you enjoy stories like this one, don't forget to subscribe for more. What happened next in the store would shock everyone present, especially the employee who had already dismissed the man in front of him. Keanu stood quietly, his gaze fixed on the dazzling watch in the showcase. The light reflected off the diamonds, creating a subtle sparkle that seemed to hold his attention. His body language was calm, almost indifferent to the opulence surrounding him. The employee, now only a few steps away, straightened his posture as he approached. His tailored suit seemed to exaggerate his sense of authority. With a slight tilt of his head, he gave Keanu a quick once-over, his eyes lingering on the frayed edges of Keanu's shirt and the faded fabric of his jeans. The faintest smirk flickered across his face, betraying his unspoken thoughts. "Can I help you?" the employee asked, his tone courteous but devoid of genuine warmth. Keanu, unfazed, pointed to the centerpiece of the display. "I'd like to know more about that watch," he said plainly, his voice steady and direct. The employee hesitated for a moment, his expression unreadable. Then, leaning closer to the case, he said, "That particular model is quite exclusive. Are you sure it's what you're looking for?" Keanu met the man's gaze with quiet confidence. "Yes, I'd like to hear the details," he replied without any trace of hesitation. The employee took a step back, crossing his arms as his lips curved into a faintly mocking smile. "This watch," he began, "isn't for everyone. Perhaps I can show you something more practical." His tone grew sharper, as though he had already decided Keanu wasn't worth the effort. Keanu didn't flinch. Instead, he kept his attention on the watch, as though the employee's words didn't matter. The subtle power in his silence seemed to unsettle the man, who shifted uncomfortably but didn't relent. Nearby, a couple exchanged whispers, glancing between Keanu and the employee. An older woman frowned slightly, sensing the air of tension but choosing to stay silent. The employee sighed, as if indulging a child's stubborn request. "All right," he said, his tone heavy with sarcasm. "This watch is made from 18-karat gold, inlaid with diamonds, and crafted by one of Switzerland's most esteemed watchmakers. It's a collector's piece, valued far beyond what most people could afford." Keanu listened attentively, nodding slowly. "That's what I wanted to know," he said simply, his voice steady. The employee raised an eyebrow, his smirk returning. "Well," he said with an exaggerated pause, "if that's all, perhaps we can find something more reasonable for you to consider." Keanu didn't respond immediately. Instead, he shifted his gaze back to the watch, the faintest hint of a smile tugging at the corners of his lips. His calm composure contrasted sharply with the employee's growing impatience, creating a tension that others in the store couldn't ignore. Keanu stood still, his calm presence unwavering. He pointed at the same watch again and spoke clearly. "I'm interested in this one. Can you explain its features?" The employee sighed dramatically, his irritation barely hidden. "Sir, let me be honest with you," he said, crossing his arms. "This watch is exclusive. It's not the kind of item just anyone walks in and buys." His tone was sharper now, a mix of sarcasm and disbelief. Keanu didn't react, his gaze remaining fixed on the watch. His lack of response seemed to frustrate the employee even more. "This piece," the man continued, gesturing toward the showcase, "is a limited edition, only 5 in the world. It's handcrafted with white gold and encrusted with flawless diamonds. To put it simply, it's worth as much as a luxury apartment." "I understand," Keanu said, his voice steady. "Now, could you show me how it works?" The employee blinked in disbelief. "Show you how it works?" he repeated, almost laughing. "This isn't something you just try on. It's a collector's item, a masterpiece, not exactly what you'd call casual wear." Keanu nodded thoughtfully. "I see. So, it's automatic." The employee let out a forced chuckle, shaking his head. "Sir, this isn't about whether it's automatic. This is about whether you can even imagine owning it." He gestured vaguely toward Keanu's worn-out clothing. "You know, maybe you'd prefer something simpler. A nice piece, but more in line with..." He trailed off, clearly implying Keanu's appearance. The silence that followed was heavy. A few customers in the store had stopped pretending to browse and were now openly observing the exchange. One couple exchanged an awkward glance, while a younger man nearby frowned, as though unsure whether to speak up. Keanu finally broke the silence. "I'd still like to know more about this watch," he said, his voice calm and polite but firm. The employee's patience snapped. "Sir," he said, leaning slightly closer, "this isn't just a product. It's a statement, a piece of art meant for someone who truly understands its value. Honestly, I don't think this is the right watch for you." Keanu lifted his eyes and met the man's gaze. His expression didn't change, but something in his stare made the employee falter for a split second. "And what makes you think I'm not the right person for it?" Keanu asked. The question lingered in the air, leaving the employee momentarily speechless. Other customers looked on, their curiosity now fully piqued. The tension in the room was palpable, yet Keanu remained unbothered, as if he already knew the outcome of this interaction. As the employee opened his mouth to make another dismissive comment, a soft murmur came from across the store. "Wait, isn't that Keanu Reeves?" A customer near the counter whispered, her voice rising slightly in surprise. Heads turned. A middle-aged man standing beside her squinted, leaning forward as if to confirm. "It's him," he said, nodding firmly. "That's definitely Keanu Reeves." The ripple of recognition spread quickly. Gasps and hushed voices filled the space as customers began to realize who the quiet man in the worn cap and simple clothes really was. A younger woman near the entrance clutched her friend's arm, whispering, "How could they not recognize him?" The employee froze. His confident smirk vanished, replaced by a look of shock and disbelief. He stared at Keanu, his mouth opening and closing as if searching for words. "Keanu Reeves?" he stammered, his tone now completely different, hesitant and unsure. Keanu, still calm, turned to face the employee fully. His steady gaze carried a weight that silenced the room. "Does it matter who I am?" he asked, his voice even but firm. The question hung in the air, and the employee's face turned pale. He swallowed hard, his earlier arrogance now replaced with visible discomfort. The store manager, drawn by the commotion, hurried over. His expression changed immediately when he saw Keanu. "Mr. Reeves," he said, his tone nervous but polite, "I deeply apologize for any misunderstanding. Please, allow us to assist you." Keanu raised a hand, signaling the manager to stop. "It's not about an apology," he said, his voice carrying an edge of disappointment. "It's about how you choose to treat people. Anyone who walks through that door." The customers watched in silence, their admiration for Keanu growing with every word. The employee, now visibly flustered, tried to respond. I didn't realize. I didn't know it was you," he said, his voice trembling. Keanu tilted his head slightly, his expression thoughtful. "And if I weren't me?" he asked. "Would it still be okay to dismiss someone because of how they look?" The employee dropped his gaze, unable to meet Keanu's eyes. Whispers of agreement and nods of understanding spread through the small crowd of onlookers. Without raising his voice or losing his composure, Keanu delivered his parting words. "Respect doesn't depend on recognition. It's about who you are, not who the other person is." The manager stood frozen, his face a mix of embarrassment and regret. The employee remained silent, his earlier bravado now completely gone. The store fell silent as Keanu turned toward the door, his calm footsteps echoing through the space. The customers watched him leave, their admiration evident in their quiet murmurs. The employee, however, stood frozen, his face pale and his hands nervously gripping the edges of his jacket. For a moment, the man glanced at the manager, hoping for guidance, but the expression on his superior's face was stern and unforgiving. The manager stepped closer, his voice low but firm. "Do you have any idea what you've just done?" he asked, his tone heavy with disapproval. The employee stammered, I didn't know who he was. I didn't think. That's the problem." The manager interrupted, his words sharp. "You didn't think. It shouldn't matter who he is. Every customer deserves respect, whether they're famous or not." The weight of the manager's words sank in. The employee lowered his head, his earlier arrogance now replaced by shame. He replayed the interaction in his mind, from his mocking tone to his dismissive gestures. Each memory hit him harder than the last. Meanwhile, Keanu exited the store without looking back. His movements were unhurried, his demeanor unchanged, as if the incident hadn't fazed him at all. Outside, a few people recognized him and called out his name, but he simply nodded politely before disappearing into the busy street. Back inside, the manager turned to the employee again, his frustration clear. "You didn't just insult a customer," he said, his voice quieter but no less serious. "You insulted the values this store is supposed to represent. Respect, professionalism, excellence. You threw all of that away the moment you judged him by his appearance." The employee nodded slowly, unable to argue. He knew the manager was right. "I'm sorry," he said finally, his voice barely audible. "Sorry doesn't fix this," the manager replied bluntly. "It's not just about this one incident. You need to think long and hard about how you treat people, or you won't last in this business." The employee remained silent, his mind spinning with regret. He thought about Keanu's calm responses, the way he had handled the situation with grace instead of anger. The contrast between Keanu's humility and his own behavior was stark and humbling. The customers in the store began to disperse, their quiet conversations a reminder of how quickly news like this could spread. The employee could feel their glances as they left, each one a silent judgment he couldn't escape. News of the incident didn't take long to spread. By the next day, social media platforms buzzed with posts and comments about how Keanu Reeves had been mistreated at the luxury watch store. Customers who had witnessed the exchange shared their experiences online, describing Keanu's grace and humility compared to the employee's arrogance. The story quickly went viral, gathering attention from fans and media outlets alike. Articles and videos discussed not only Keanu's calm demeanor, but also the deeper lesson about respect and the dangers of judging people based on appearances. The store's reputation, once built on prestige and exclusivity, took a severe hit. Comments flooded their online pages, with many expressing disappointment and vowing never to shop there again. Meanwhile, Keanu visited a small watch shop in a modest part of the city. The atmosphere was warm and inviting, with shelves lined with simple yet elegant timepieces. An older salesperson greeted him with a genuine smile and asked how he could assist. Keanu returned the smile and replied, "I'm looking for something meaningful." The salesperson carefully selected a vintage pocket watch and showed it to him. "This piece has a special engraving," he explained, opening the watch to reveal the words, "Time flies, but love remains." Keanu's eyes softened as he examined it. "This is perfect," he said, nodding. He purchased the watch and left the store, feeling satisfied with his choice and the kindness he had experienced. Back at the luxury store, the employee who had dismissed Keanu couldn't escape his mistake. He avoided his co-workers' glances and struggled with the weight of his actions. Every comment online, every mention of the story in the media, felt like a personal reminder of his failure. He replayed the moment over and over, wishing he had treated Keanu differently. The manager called a meeting with the staff to address the situation. Holding a printed copy of a viral post about the incident, he read aloud Keanu's parting words. "Respect doesn't depend on recognition. It's about who you are, not who the other person is." The room was silent as those words sank in. The manager turned to the employee directly and said, "This isn't just about one customer. It's about how we represent ourselves every single day." Over time, the employee realized he needed to make a change. He left the store and found work in a smaller shop where he could focus on rebuilding his approach to customer service. He greeted every person who walked through the door with genuine kindness, remembering the lesson he had learned the hard way. One day, a customer entered wearing simple clothes, and the employee smiled warmly, saying, "Welcome. How can I help you today?" The story served as a powerful reminder to many. Respect and humility are priceless, no matter where you are or who you meet. Keanu's actions didn't just impact one store or one employee, they inspired thousands of people to reflect on their own attitudes and behavior. This story reminds us all of the power of respect and humility. Treating others with kindness isn't just about being polite. It's about recognizing the value in everyone, no matter how they look or where they come from. Small gestures of respect can make a huge difference, and they often leave a lasting impression. Have you ever experienced or witnessed a moment where someone was judged unfairly? How did it impact you, and what lesson did it teach? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your stories could inspire someone else to see the world differently. If you enjoyed this story and its message, don't forget to follow for more content that highlights the importance of empathy, compassion, and understanding. We bring you stories that not only entertain but also leave you thinking long after they're over. Let's work together to create a world where respect is a given, not an exception. Thank you for being part of this journey. Stay kind, and see you in the next story. Would you like further assistance?